So hello and welcome back to the channel. Been a couple of days away enjoying a little bit of camping, and I've come back to Assetto Corsa Competizione with update or patch 1.03. Now last week we had patch 1.02 which didn't particularly do a great deal for us on Xbox, and this video is generally just about Xbox, but patch 1.03 was coming out yesterday, which was the 28th of July, and I've got to be honest, it's changed nothing for me, or nothing for the better, let's put it that way. In fact, I'll scratch that. That is definitely wrong. One of the best things that came out of the update really was the wheel support. Now I say wheel support in the fact that when you power up the game, the wheel is actually recognised, so I'm not having to unconnect the wheel again using the USB or change the PC to Xbox mode again. It recognises the wheel, so thumbs up on that one. Coming back to the game, if you close the console down and you come back launching into the game without reloading the game, it doesn't recognise the wheel is there. You need to do the same rigmarole. So generally I recommend just reloading the game every time you come to this game. That way the menus will always be there. Let's have a look at the multiplayer. Let's just in the special events, you would usually, if you reload the game, you don't actually see the times, so there we go then, the times are still there, so that's nice to see. Just have a quick look at what the leaderboard's there, so it's still in the 56s. I don't think that's going to change. So for me, the force feedback is still exactly the same. There's been absolutely no change for me. I'm using the Fanatec 2.5 base, the Club Sport wheel, I think it's the Forza wheel really, the Forza Motorsport. In fact, it's not the Forza Motorsport wheel because it doesn't say it on it. It's just like the suede wrap with the Club Sport hub. But anyway, nothing's changed for me. The detail is exactly the same as it was. Yes, I can increase the sensation of road surfaces, but that was always the case. I could always do that, but the problem with it is that if you start increasing those details, you start getting the clipping effects down in the bottom right hand corner, as we've seen before. I can increase the weight of the wheel, that's not an issue, but it starts clipping. It's the small detail when you're going around slower speed corners. The sensation of grip just isn't there. There's no feeling of grip. It's all visual cues that you're going from. So you could go from understeer, where the wheel does generally go light. That sensation is there, but it's just lighter than, it almost goes to nothing rather than the tiniest bit of something. It really is negligible. The gap between them is just too small. There needs to be some finer, smaller detail in the wheel at slower speeds. Yes, there are occasions at high speeds when you actually feel the sensation of downforce and the wheel does get nice and heavy, it's a fantastic feeling. It really is. It's something that Assetto Corsa does well. The first game, it's just that sensation of grip. I feel it most, especially on the McLaren 650S on Assetto Corsa, but within Assetto Corsa Competizione, it seems sporadic. It's just not there constantly. You can go through the same corner lap after lap and not get the same feeling of grip. But if they can increase that sensation, that would be fantastic. But the biggest thing for me, and it's a massive downer, it really is. If I just launch a single session, I was running laps in the Porsche at Paul Ricard just last night, and I've got to be honest, I did about 54 laps testing the tyres, and it's definitely a video that I will be shooting, but today's video is just about the recent patch, because it's not brought about a lot of good changes. I don't think there's more negatives to this patch than there are positives. You get this section, as you can see on the screen there as well, save and replay. That just comes up randomly. It isn't actually saving a replay, but that graphic comes up every now and then. Let's just have a look It doesn't particularly, I don't particularly need to do anything in this section. I'll just turn that down a little bit. It's very loud for me. So usually in this position, we could adjust a few things using our keyboard support, because we're in the 21st century. Xbox players, PS4 players, we've got what's called a keyboard. I know a lot of people on PC generally have one of these, but on Xbox nowadays, especially through Project Cars 2, Project Cars 2's keyboard support was fantastic. I've got an array of keys on my keyboard that have already got little symbols on them for windscreen wipers, ABS, moving the seat back and forward, tilting it up and down, traction control. I haven't got all these buttons available on the wheel to be able to do all that, and you can't just reach down fiddling with a control pad every 5 minutes. You just want to be able to reach across to the keyboard that's sat alongside you like any other sim racing setup. This is no different. So looking at the screen on the display here, you can't see it from my perspective, but I've got my wheel just sat right in front of my screen. It's about 3 inches away from my screen. So when I sit in this position, I'm trying to sit within the cockpit of the car. That's the orientation that I'm trying to achieve. So when I position the surroundings, I'm trying to achieve what I can for the surroundings that I'm sat in. So I'll move the position of the dashboard down so that I can almost see through the center of the wheel to the console display, and everything's sort of where it should be. With the keyboard support, it gave you that option to be able to move things around. Now I remember before, if I flick back to a different view, and in fact I'll just run through a few of the keys that are still supported. Now you've got the Q key, which changes down gear, and E changes up gear. You've got the S button, which will kill the engine or start the engine. In fact, it's just going to kill the engine. I don't know why you would leave that on there. And then you've got, I imagine it's the W key. I've got a symbol over it. In fact, it's the one next to X. I'd imagine it's a B. But I can't quite see the keyboard because I've got things covered on it. But the one next to X and V, it's in the middle of those. That will actually cycle through the displays, which is great, because then that's another function that you don't need to have on your wheel, because it's redundant. Once you've chosen your view, you're going to generally stick with it. And thankfully, I've set my view position in the Porsche. So that's stayed exactly the same, and it's perfect, just how I like it. Fantastic. Another key that still works is the insert button, which cycles through the menus, and that's it. I cannot change my seating position at all. So let's just have a little quick look. If I go into a car that I've never particularly driven before, and see what seating position I get given. So let's just move across here. Let's go with the BMW, I think. In fact, yeah, I think I've driven the BMW, but maybe I've not changed the seating position. Let's have a little look. And it's just disappointing. The keyboard, there's so many keys within the games like this that you need keyboard support. It was something, I mean, look at that, look at this driving position.
Green light, go, go, go.
I mean, I feel like I'm an infant child sat in front of this monitor now, because it's like this, the windscreen's up here, and I'm sort of having to look like this. I can't see where I'm going. The height of how it's set is just totally wrong. So let's go through the keys. Now I've got the wheel in the way. It's a better driving position, but it's not perfect. I want to be able to position it. Is there any other positions that I could use? I mean, that's just miles away. and I've still got the keys. That would probably be the best option for me at this particular point, which just isn't ideal. I'm not going to get the proper field of view at all. Everything is just too far ahead of me, and that's just too close. So it's really going to limit, I think it's just really limiting the potential of this game. We know the functionality's there, we know we can change it, you've just taken that ability away for us. This is definitely a video for the developers rather than the consumer. So let's come back out of there, because I'm just never going to drive the BMW in that position. Thankfully, it's been an option on Xbox to be able to position the wheel, position the screen, and I've managed to be able to set at least one of the cars that I enjoy driving to a position that I could drive in. So let's just have a look at something else that was brought up. If I go back to a car that I can actually drive, so let's get back in the Porsche. I'll choose my own livery, which is great. But yes, let's take a look at the key bindings. I think this is one of the biggest issues that we know you can sort out, because it's been sorted out already. I mean, look at, that's the driving position I want. I'm sat, I can see my centre. I've always thought that when you sit in your own vehicle and you look out of the window, you generally position your eyes at the centre of the windscreen. I don't know if it's the same for everybody, but generally that's how the seating position is for me, and that's how I generally position the seat. So when I come to a game and I set that, it's always just perfect. It really is. And you need to be able to position the car so you can see the bonnet. You can't determine spatial awareness without seeing the edges of the bonnet, and that's just one key factor that seems to be missing in that view. And it's just something that's there if you can use the keyboard. So let's move into the menu and just have a look on the right hand side. I've got 2 buttons assigned for shifting up and shifting down, and I've got 1 button on my wheel for the pit limiter. I don't need the start button because I've set that to auto. There's just no point using that. I'm always going to want to turn the engine on, and I can't think of a point where I'd want to turn it off unless I'm doing a pit stop. So just get rid of that button altogether. The windscreen wipers, yes, you would use them, but I've got that assigned to automatic. That takes that nightmare away for you. And let's move further down. Increase traction control, reduce traction control. Where do you want us to put all these functions? I've got 2 buttons on my wheel that are already assigned to changing up and down gears, so that's those out of the way. And I've got 6 other buttons. One of them's the pit stop. One of them's the flasher that doesn't actually work. None of these actually work. I can't change any of them. My D-pad, I'd want to look left and right, obviously, and look back is down. HUD display, where I can actually cycle through, well, I can use the insert button on the keyboard. Brilliant. Save a replay. You could just assign one of these to keys on the keyboard. They're just simple buttons just to push. And traction control options, yes, I would like to be able to use them on the wheel, but I haven't got enough buttons. So I just assign Y and X to change between traction control settings that I would like to use. ABS settings, I've not got enough buttons on my wheel to be able to do all these things. And then we look at the view options. I want to be able to assign keys to move the seat forward and the seat backwards, and you've just taken them away from the keyboard. You've got to add keyboard support to this game. It's an absolute must to get everything out of it. And then there's the option on the left hand side. Well, there isn't very many options. There's no presets. driving controls, I'm using the steering wheel. There's nothing to do with steering wheel detail there at all. Anyway, the gain, I'm still using it on 85%. Any more than that, I start to get clipping. I'm running the wheel at 160% on the steering wheel. In Assetto Corsa, I think I'm probably running at about 70%. So everything's just dialed up to be able to get some form of detail. The damping, definitely for me on the Fanatec, definitely helps. And the steering lock, obviously I'm using that depending on which vehicle I'm driving, and for this one I'm using the Porsche. But I just can't believe that you would take away the keyboard support. It would be something that you would definitely be looking at adding for PS4 users so they can get the best out of the game as well. Keyboard support is an absolute must in this game to be able to position yourself perfectly behind the wheel. Alright, you can take away the F6 function and the F2 function to cycle through, but that's another key thing that I really feel is missing. Unless you actually go into the options menu and choose to remove everything from the hood, it's very hard to cycle through those options. If you go into drive, I mean, I don't know if I'm like something different to everybody else, but sometimes when I'm driving I prefer not to have all these details on the screen. I don't care what my tyres are doing. Once I've set them to a certain temperature and I'm driving, I know that they're going to stay in that temperature range unless I'm doing something stupid and driving the car aggressively and losing the rear end. The tyre pressures are probably going to stay exactly where they are. So I can get rid of that graphic. If I know how much fuel's in the car and it's going to last me the entire race, I can get rid of that graphic. If I can see on the display what gear I'm in, or I know what gear I'm in, I don't need to see that graphic. I could turn off the track competency details. I can get rid of the lap time. If I can just drive to the delta in the screen, it just becomes so much more immersive. And there was the option to blank the entire graphics so that you can just immerse yourself in driving the car. That's been taken totally away. Unless you go into the options menu and pause it mid-game to get rid of these details, that was a perfect option to have within the keyboard support or as a menu, and you've just taken it away. But as far as the force feedback is concerned, like I've mentioned, there's just been no difference for me within this patch. Whether it was something that was supposed to be different, I know numerous people have mentioned that their wheel does feel much better. I've also had people mention that they didn't have the keyboard support even though they were on Xbox. So why are people on the same console experiencing different versions of the game? It just seems very strange to me. And the same goes for PS4 players. Numerous people, I don't know whether it depends on the peripherals that they're using, whether if for example you're using a Logitech wheel you don't get keyboard support, which I find very strange. But using the Fanatec wheel, I've always had the keyboard support, and as you can see from one of my previous videos, the keyboard support was fantastic. And I know I've rambled on a lot about keyboard support, but I just think it was one of the main things that set apart Project Cars 2 from any other game, that they'd actually thought about this. And I just thought, coming to Assetto Corsa Competizione, that yeah, the developers have actually thought about this and they've added the keyboard support because they know it's an absolute must. Obviously there's still other people out there that are refusing to play this game because of the amount of flaws that are currently with it, and we're all just waiting for the force feedback. As you can see, the save option's still there. We're still on version 1.37, and the other thing that I was going to quickly look at has gone completely from my mind as I've come out of here. That was it, multiplayer. So we're going to the multiplayer, and the total servers is 93 servers. This is the middle of the day here. It's probably about 11 o'clock UK time, and there are 26 people playing this game right now. 26 people. 12 players that are out of reach, so 12 people are playing in the competition servers, you're losing the audience because the support's it's just not coming fast enough. People are going back to Assetto Corsa, back to Project Cars 2, and this game is phenomenal for me. The attention to detail is just what I've always wanted with a console game. Yes, everyone's saying jump to PC, but it's just not a financial option for me. So let's go into the server list, and you've got the top 5. There's all these other circuits, not a single player on them, and you've got to do something about this, people. The developers, you really do. The keyboard support needs adding. The wheel support needs to be more detailed through the wheel. I just don't know how hard it is to achieve 2 things: keyboard support and wheel functionality. Forget everything else for now. The frames per second, it's drivable at 30 frames per second. Yes, the replays don't look particularly polished. They are very jumpy from time to time. But for me, if you can nail the keyboard, the wheel support, the Logitech G920s, the G20, whatever it is, some of the Thrustmaster wheels, TXs, there must be about 8 wheel combinations for this game that just need perfecting. That's just 8 wheels. There doesn't need to be much goes into it just to increase the detail from the lower speeds. The force feedback needs to be better, and the keyboard support needs adding. We want to be able to move our seating position around to better position it for ourselves. Some people have these up on the wall at quite a distance. Some people, like myself, the screens, it's in touching distance. It just needs to be better. And I don't really care about the online lobbies. There's so many lobbies within this game that you can choose from, and you could just say to your friends, look, go to the European lobby, which got different types of weather at the Ungaro Ring. Let's have a race there. I'm sure you could find plenty of servers. I mean, there's so many of these servers that are always empty. You could certainly just pick one and just host it yourself with your mates. I just don't understand it. But for 26 players for a game that's just launched with 94 available servers, I mean, if you imagine how many people would be in them, you're looking at thousands of players if the game was supported properly. It is just disheartening because you've gone to so much lengths to get this game onto console. You're just forgetting the console player wants a very similar setup to anyone that's on PC. A lot of us have got these sim rigs all set up with the driving position just as you would want it, and to position the screen and not give us the option to move it, I just find it amazing. But yeah, that was my rant. This is definitely a rant video, definitely aimed at the developers rather than the consumers, the viewers, the subscribers out there. For all of you that are struggling with your seating positions, issues with the game, get on the Kunos website or the Assetto Corsa forum, make your points known to the developers that you're not happy with certain things. I've heard lots of good things about Kunos and their desires to want to sort these things out, and without people mentioning them and I guess just moaning about them, they're never going to sort these things out. But the key issues for me is the force feedback and the keyboard support to position yourself where you want to sit, and that'll make a lot of people happy with this game. You can start working on the development behind the frames per second afterwards, options to maybe tone down the detail as opposed to frames per second or quality of graphics. Some people don't care about whether the crowd's singing and dancing or moving crowds if the gameplay was smoother. There's just issues that could be looked at. I know you're working behind the scenes to do as much as you can, but just from me to you, the keyboard support, and I'd be happy to continue playing this game. Everything else will eventually come, I'm sure of it. But yeah, thanks for watching, thanks for listening to me rant about this for 20 odd minutes. I'll leave you to the next video where I'll fingers crossed be looking at tyres and cambers and just things that are really making this game so detailed for me, and the testings bringing back such results, just how you can get the car set up much better. And it is, yeah, I'll leave that till another video, and ciao for now.